Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? If you go to ESPN.com on the NFL tab, there's a piece up. It's on the homepage. It's predicting NFL Week 12 upsets plus weekly buzz and notes. This is by Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano. And they sort of lead with the hot seat chatter. Now, Jeremy Fowler mentions that a year ago there were 10 jobs that opened. And as of right now, there are 4 coaches in year one that have 3 wins or less. They are Josh McDaniels, Lovie Smith, Dennis Allen, and Hackett. They also note that there's some coaches that you got to keep an eye on, right? Like Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll are in their 70s. How much longer do they want to coach? We'll see in time. Brandon Staley with the Chargers, if things go badly there, could go that way. The interesting thing, though, that Jeremy Fowler said about Dennis Allen was, even though it hasn't started well for Dennis Allen, he noted that he would be surprised if Dennis Allen doesn't get another year based on the setup there. And he notes GM Mickey Loomis, who's embedded, had a heavy influence over Allen's hiring. Essentially saying, Loomis picked Allen, Loomis ain't going nowhere, so is Loomis really going to fire the guy he hired a year later? Probably not. Now, that's not great logic, because I would argue that's similar to a coaching hire. We've seen that with draft picks as well. There's times the Saints have drafted players that didn't pan out, and they've elected to keep undrafted guys over the drafted guys because they were better. And the most notable of that is, of course, Pierre Thomas over Antonio Pittman, who was a 4th-round draft pick, and they cut after year one. So I will still maintain that even though Jeremy Fowler is saying he'd be surprised, the bigger thing is, how do they finish? I'll get back to that in just a second. The other part that's pretty fascinating is they look at the candidates, and they look at who are the top candidates most likely to get interviews. And so they obviously start with Sean Payton, who is the most notable and is going to be on everybody's short list to get a head coaching job, should he want it at the point. And real quickly, the note here from Fowler is that Sean Payton seems to be lurking in a big way. And speaking of worst-kept secrets, Payton circling around the Chargers is probably one. Some around the league believe he would wait that one out if the Saints would trade his draft rights, of course. The other part of this that's notable with respect to Sean Payton, and Dan Graziano points this out. Graziano points out with Sean Payton that every opening is going to want to talk to him. Said Carolina would throw a pile of money at Sean Payton. But he points out what we've all talked about, the fact that Sean Payton's going to want to go somewhere where they have a solid quarterback situation, and that's why people are connecting with the Chargers. And then he also notes that Arizona is a potential spot for Sean Payton, assuming there's an opening there, and that Payton would want to go somewhere, like we've talked about, where it's a warm weather climate with a quarterback. What he points out that was really interesting, though, is Sean Payton, the Saints have Sean Payton's rights for the next 2 years. And if Sean Payton decides to wait another year to get back in, and I don't know that he will, that the Saints' leverage drops so dramatically that the draft compensation that you would get is almost negligible. So if you're the Saints, you're really looking at 2 things. I mean, number one, you want Sean Payton back coaching again this year. If you want to recoup some type of draft capital, you want him coaching again in 2023. You want him to get a job. And the Chargers is one we've talked about a lot, and that from a Saints perspective would be way more appealing because he would be off in the AFC and you wouldn't have to see him. unless you get into a Super Bowl scenario, and that's all fine and good. Let him go coach Justin Herbert, and the Saints maybe get a first-round draft pick for it, and that would be fantastic if it played out that way. The other part of the conversation was about if Dennis Allen would be a one-and-done. And for me, this goes back to where I'll keep saying it depends how you finish. If the Saints lose out, so I understand Jeremy Fowler's point where he says, hey, look, I'd be surprised if Dennis Allen's a one and done. Mickey Loomis hired him. He's probably not going to blow him out after 1 year. Maybe, but if they lose out and end up, as a 4-win team, if they go 4-13, there is no leg to stand on. Your wins would be a season-opening win against Atlanta where you probably rallied from a big deficit late. A win over Seattle. You beat a bad Raiders team and a 3-win Rams team. Like, there's nothing there that suggests this organization is headed in the right direction. So it really depends on what you do over these final 6 games. You've got San Francisco, Tampa, your open date, the bye. You've got Atlanta, Cleveland, Philly, and Carolina. What the Saints do in that stretch matters. Because, listen, all 4-win records aren't created equal. Here's what I mean. 2019, the Cincinnati Bengals were 2-14. They got the number 1 pick in the draft. They draft Joe Burrow. They draft Burrow. They go 4-11-1. And remember, Burrow didn't even play the last month of the season because he tore his ACL. But you went from 2 wins to 4 wins, and you had a tie in that mix. So you more than doubled your win total by percentage year to year. Even though you were a 4-win team, you could see the arrow pointing up. The Saints team this year, if they crater in this final 6 weeks, you've already seen a massive regression. The question is, from here, where you were at the start of the season, the regression of this organization to where they are now at 4-7, over the final 6 weeks, can you start to see the arrow go back up? To feel optimistic about the future, to where you could say, okay, Sean Payton's coming back into the league. You're going to get a draft pick. Go make the most out of this draft. Solidify your quarterback position, the roster around him, and see if you can start to get this thing trending back in the right direction. That's what the final 6 games of this season over 7 weeks are for the New Orleans Saints right now. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dennis Allen is absolutely back next year, because I just don't believe that. If they crater over these final 6 games, they will blow him out. We saw Mrs. Benson do that with Stan Van Gundy with the Pelicans, and I absolutely believe she'd do the same thing with Dennis Allen here if there's no sign of progress here over the final 6 weeks or final 6 games of this season. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.